Hello everyone, today we will discuss procedural knowledge, one of the stages and the theory Women's Way of Knowing developed by Maryfield Belenky and her colleagues. So this theory explains how women develop their understanding of knowledge and how they learn to think critically about the world around them. So procedural knowledge focuses on how people learn to evaluate information using logic, evidence, and proper methods instead of simply accepting what others say.
Procedural knowledge refers to the stage where individuals begin to use systematic ways of thinking in order to understand and evaluate ideas. So, at this stage, people no longer depend on authority figures such as teachers, parents, or experts. Instead, they start to analyze information, ask questions, and support their idea with evidence. This stage shows that the development of critical thinking, where knowledge is built through reasoning, investigation, and careful evaluation.
There are several important characteristics of procedural knowledge. First, individuals begin to value logic and evidence when forming opinions. Second, they learn to question information instead of blindly accepting it. Third, they develop the ability to analyze arguments and determine whether they are valid or reliable. Because of this, learning becomes a more active process where people try to understand how knowledge is formed and supported by facts.
So procedural knowledge is divided into two main approaches, that is separate knowing and connected knowing. So separate knowing focuses on critical analysis and debate. So in this approach, people challenge ideas and evaluate arguments objectively. Connected knowing, on the other hand, focuses on understanding other people's perspectives. So instead of debating, individuals try to understand the experiences and viewpoints of others before forming conclusions. So both approaches help individuals develop a deeper understanding of knowledge.
Uh, Procedural knowledge can be seen in many real-life situations. In education, students use procedural knowledge when they conduct research, analyze sources, and support their ideas with evidence. So, in society, people use procedural knowledge when they verify informations in online before sharing it to avoid spreading misinformation. So, even in daily life, making decisions by comparing facts, opinions, and evidence is an example of procedural knowledge.
Now, we will show a short video clip that demonstrates how people evaluate information using critical thinking.
Every day, a sea of decisions stretches before us. Some are small and unimportant, but others have a larger impact on our lives. For example, which politician should I vote for? Should I try the latest diet craze? Or will email make me a millionaire? We're bombarded with so many decisions that it's impossible to make a perfect choice every time. But there are many ways to improve our chances, and one particularly effective technique is critical thinking. This is a way of approaching a question that allows us to carefully deconstruct a situation, reveal its hidden issues, such as bias and manipulation, and make the best decision. If the critical part sounds negative, that's because, in a way, it is. Rather than choosing an answer because it feels right, a person who uses critical thinking subjects all available options to scrutiny and skepticism. Using the tools at their disposal, they'll eliminate everything but the most useful and reliable information. There are many different ways of approaching critical thinking, but here's one 5-step process that may help you solve any number of problems. 1. Formulate your question. In other words, know what you're looking for. This isn't always as straightforward as it sounds. For example, if you're deciding whether to try out the newest diet craze, your reasons for doing so may be obscured by other factors, like claims that you'll see results in just 2 weeks. But if you approach the situation with a clear view of what you're actually trying to accomplish by dieting, whether that's weight loss, better nutrition, or having more energy, that'll equip you to sift through this information critically, find what you're looking for, and decide whether the new fad really suits your needs. 2. gather your information. There's lots of it out there, so having a clear idea of your question will help you determine what's relevant. If you're trying to decide on a diet to improve your nutrition, you may ask an expert for their advice or seek other people's testimonies. Information gathering helps you weigh different options, moving you closer to a decision that meets your goal. 3. Apply the information, something you do by asking critical questions. Facing a decision, ask yourself, what concepts are at work? What assumptions exist? Is my interpretation of the information logically sound? For example, in an email that promises you millions, you should consider, what is shaping my approach to this situation? Do I assume the sender is telling the truth? Based on the evidence, is it logical to assume I'll win any money? 4. Consider the implications. Imagine it's election time, and you've selected a political candidate based on their promise to make it cheaper for drivers to fill up on gas. At first glance, that seems great. But what about the long-term environmental effects? If gasoline use is less restricted by cost, this could also cause a huge surge in air pollution, an unintended consequence that's important to think about. 5. Explore other points of view. Ask yourself why so many people are drawn to the policies of the opposing political candidate. Even if you disagree with everything that candidate says, exploring the full spectrum of viewpoints might explain why some policies that don't seem valid to you appeal to others. This will allow you to explore alternatives, evaluate your own choices, and ultimately help you make more informed decisions. This 5-step process is just one tool, and it certainly won't eradicate difficult decisions from our lives, but it can help us increase the number of positive choices we make. Critical thinking can give us the tools to sift through a sea of information and find what we're looking for. And if enough of us use it, it has the power to make the world a more reasonable place.
While watching the clip, notice how the speaker explains the importance of analyzing sources and using reasoning to determine whether information is reliable. This idea strongly relates to the concept of procedural knowledge.
The video demonstrates procedural knowledge because it shows how individuals should analyze information instead of simply believing everything they hear or read. So the speaker explains the importance of checking sources, examining evidence, and using logical thinking. So these steps reflect the procedures or methods people use to understand knowledge more accurately.
So in conclusion, procedural knowledge is an important stage in women's ways of knowing because it encourages critical thinking, reasoning, and evidence-based understanding. So instead of relying on only authority, individuals learn to analyze ideas and develop their own informed perspectives.
Through procedural knowledge, people become more independent learners who are able to evaluate information carefully and make responsible decisions.